Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special fireside chat today. I say special because on the occasion of World Autism Awareness Day, which is celebrated on April 2nd, we are here to understand and be aware of those who are born special. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 160 children has an autism spectrum disorder. In India alone, we have 2.2 million children who are autistic and over 18 million people who have autism. Saying that, we do have an environment which is conducive for them to function freely and thrive. Is our society inclusive enough to embrace them as they are? Do they have a chance to equal opportunity, to live with dignity, and find their way in the world? And most importantly, do we understand the strength of the beautiful minds when we look at them? To help us be aware of children with autism and what can be our contribution in making this world a better place for them, we have with us today Akshayee Shetty, founder and director of Sense Kaleidoscope, an academy that provides solutions to those with autism and Asperger's syndrome. Welcome, Akshayee. It's
Thank
truly
you.
an honor to have you here with us at Walmart Global Tech India. I am just taking a minute to share my screen. So Akshay, when I first walked into your NGO, I thought I knew what to expect and the children I would meet. But what really took me by surprise is the incredible display of creativity. And I just want to take a minute to um, show it in the screen. This is a picture that I had actually taken in the center. And really beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work by your
Thank you.
team.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know that you will cover this more. So with
Okay.
that, I'm just going to hand it over to you. Go ahead and share your experience and the reason why the NGO was started.
Super. Thank you very much, Sunita. Thanks a lot. I will go ahead and share my screen. Please do let me know if you're able to see and that it loads up so then I can begin.
Yes, we can see it.
You're able to see the screen?
Yes.
Sorry, just give me a second. Okay, so hello, everybody. I am Akshay and the co-founder of an academy that functions with a single point focus of providing solutions to those with autism and Asperger's syndrome. So let us begin with understanding what is autism and what is meant by the words on the spectrum. Autism is a lifelong neurodevelopmental disorder which affects all the senses. What this means is that it affects the way one sees, smells, hears, tastes, and also how one feels when one is touched, whether by a person or by the environment itself. It affects how people communicate and interact with the world. Now, autism struggles with sensory processing difficulties, which means that their five senses do not function like ours. They're either hyper or hyposensitive. To understand autism better, it might be useful for all of you to visualize a densely populated circuit board, which is how our brains are wired. Now, imagine a differently wired circuit board, which is always firing a whole load of signals. Well, hyper means that they can possibly feel 100x times more than you and me. And hypo means that they could be having an out of body experience. I do believe that for a child who has just come into this world and who relies on experiencing thirst, hunger, love, and danger through this body, this would be an appalling experience. Added on to this is the fact that the kids live in cities, which are loud, chaotic, frantic environments. So the question, why have cityscapes become challenging for the autistic mind? Well, we need to understand that this mind does not want the chaos. It seeks organization, predictability, and calm spaces that can soothe the senses. Let's just imagine the things that happen in the city. For starters, someone or something keeps making loud sounds. And for the autistic mind, these sounds translate as loud, ear shattering sounds causing immense fears. Bright lights flashed everywhere. Now they translate as fiery sparks that are blinding them. Touch has no boundaries, which translates as somebody burning their skins literally by touching them, or for others as though it never was there. Would you not be anxious? Well, people with autism struggle with extreme anxiety, which leads to meltdowns and shutdowns. Also, autism is noted for having very highly focused interests and hobbies. And the reason it is called the spectrum disorder is because it affects people in different ways. If you know one child with autism, trust me, you know one child with autism. The definition of autism has changed over the decades, and it could change in future years as we understand more. Now, let us see what we are doing to autism in India. Autism is a murky word in India. When I say autism, it paints the picture of a person who is low functioning, has many behaviors, is a person who needs lifelong assistance and cannot be integrated in many environments. The amount of social stigma generated with this word is immense and worrying. It is the reason why parents hide their children for as long as possible from the world and are constantly trying to get their children to fit into normal schools. This autistic child cannot function in a classroom of 30, 20, or even 10 children. This is a neurodiverse brain. It has its own strengths and weaknesses. And what we are doing is ignoring their strengths and highlighting their weaknesses by putting them in environments that do not suit their needs. This was the exact reason why me and my co founder, Anima, decided to start an autism specific school. Now, what you see on the screen is the question we have been trying to answer. And yes, we have come a long way since we started 8 years ago. This question does not really have clear statistics, which only tells us that it is a very complex and challenging problem in India. Research has established that young adults with autism across the world have lower employment rates and higher rates of complete social isolation than people with other disabilities. So, when we started, we already knew that we had taken on a huge challenge. We could see that despite the 18 million people with autism in India, awareness was very, very low. And that could mainly be because culturally, we do not like to talk about disability, disorders, disruptions, or death. We've always strayed far from grief, and anything that is uncomfortable is either replaced with a stigma, false hopes, or even ignorance. When we function like that, then we are not really seeking anything. Forget trying to dedicate efforts to design solutions to create an inclusive lifestyle. So, obviously, there were and still are gaps in the social and cultural frameworks. In services areas like education, mental health services, employment opportunities, lifetime care services, etc. The fact that professionals do not collaborate or extend the courtesy of embracing and engaging pulls the parent community down. And the stigmatization of the parent community further disables them from forming strong community models and working to better policies, which could pave the way for a better life for their children with autism. Now, I would like to present some narratives of my students that would hopefully unravel the process of an individual with autism and what he goes through with in India. And simultaneously, I'll be touching on what we do at SK to create change and empower these individuals. I will begin with Ayush Bambani. Before I start, I would like to introduce Ayush to you with a short video. Oops. Sorry, folks, give me a second.
The video is not visible. Only we are able to hear you.
Video is not visible.
Yes.
Sorry, just give me a second again. My Zoom sharing is giving me trouble. Just give me a second. Please let me know if you're able to see it now.
Yes.
Okay, great. I just need to share the sound. Please bear with me.
Again, it is stopped. Yeah, now
Are you,
we are able to.
are you able to hear it now?
Yes, it's perfect.
Thank you. So Ayush started with us when he was 16 years old. According to his reports, he struggled to write with a pencil. He was sitting in class 10, but his cognition was really sitting at the level of a first grader. He communicated with very few words and he had many aggressive behaviors. He would get upset if his routines were even slightly tweaked. He could not manage if his pickup turned up 3 minutes late. He would scream or slap people if he was not wanting to wait or work. Ayush is someone who will walk into a pool with no clothes because he forgot to bring his swimming trunks. He would not care about any other social rules, and neither does he get them. Now, Ayush is also somebody who loves to be touched and hugged, and he likes to be stimulated visually, auditorily, and through tactile mechanisms. I have always reached out to him when he's upset because this is the quickest way to calm him down. And many worry about me, who is a 5-footer person going near a largish 6-footer Hulk who is getting in the red zone. Not many know that the way to diffuse that situation is to simply talk calmly and touch him. Ayush would spend hours in sensory play, and those were the times he was the most relaxed. Ayush has repetitive behaviors. He also showcases the classic autism signs like mind blindedness, which means that he cannot understand or analyze what the other human is feeling. He has no expressive communication, which means he cannot explain what he is feeling and why. He speaks very few words like want chicken, no, yes, okay, go home. He also has echolalia, which means that he simply copies what he hears. It may not make much sense to him as those words do not really translate into meaning for him. And he would be missing out on context, sarcasm, if that was intended, extent of urgency in the conversation, underlying emotions tagged to that conversation, and even who the conversation is intended for and why. What we need to understand is that teaching a child to be literate is not the same as enabling expressive communication or building cognition about circumstances and perceptions. This is the key feature I think all educational systems are failing autism with in India. I came across so many Ayushas, and it is simply scary that each one of them is struggling even more than the other. Now, you would think, well, he does great art, so that's a positive. I will agree, but hear me out. The artworks you see here are his, and it is impossible to build such complex artworks without being a high functioning individual. Despite the many cognitive and behavioral challenges, Ayush became our first well established Zentangle artist. He worked relentlessly for 6 years and set himself up as a professional artist, and everybody loved his work. Then came a change in his life. He had to make sense of why his sibling was moving away from home to study, and that is when I noticed his OCDs go up. I saw that he was feeling a huge loss, and none of us were able to help him make this transition without him having to deal with the trauma. Now, here is a wonderful artist who has found value in his art, now experiencing trauma, and he is unable to express, which means that his emotions are being blocked or suppressed. While we celebrated this wonderful talent, we also worried about how his practice can be made sustainable for the rest of his life. The challenges only grew in the last 2 years. COVID has made things more difficult for us. Ayush simply stopped coming to the art school post COVID. The days he came, he had no motivation to work. Now, motivation is something that is very hard to inspire externally. It is the reason why education is mandatory. Education is meant to build your cognitive understanding so that one can explore the inner self and connect with the inner motivations and keep oneself productive and positive. We have taken that away from Ayush. One unbreakable rule as an autism expert is that we must never assume, never stop exploring, and expose the child to everything. Ayush was not given these opportunities. I see a beautiful mind wasted. We still are trying, as giving up is not really an option, but we hope that Ayush will one day recover from his traumas and accept the joys that art brought to him, and then we can intervene and bring back the stability to his existence. Nevertheless, it is also time that we as a system learned from our mistakes and started to enable as opposed to disable. Now we move to the second student named Rohit. Here is a story that will hopefully help us understand the possibilities if we did things right. I must warn you, the story is still in the making and we are not really there yet.
One girl who was coming to Unit SK in Jaipur last time on 2011 December and on 2012 April and 2012 May. I drew about Mansi because I liked Mansi a lot.
Why? What do you like about her?
That she played nouns with me, snakes and ladders, question and answers, She played on 2015, November 2nd, when it was Akshayee Shetty's birthday. In my old school in St. Kaleidoscope in Bangalore, I broke the mirror because Akshayee Shetty, my best friend, was crying very badly. That's why in this campus I'm very angry.
And he was shouting at you?
No, he was crying.
Crying. So that sound irritated you?
Yes, it irritates me.
Then you broke a mirror?
Yes.
And then what did the teacher tell you?
The teacher suspended me home.
Wow. Yeah?
Yes.
Wanted to show that?
Yes.
Last one. Just
Last.
children, your voices. What are these voices?
In this the third artwork is about that I feel in this I feel very angry if somebody scolds me because I do not like it if somebody scolds me, and these are the things that what all make me scared also.
Who scolded?
Rohit met me when he was 11 years old. Today, he's 20. A boy who I was told displayed very strong behaviors and loved art. He was verbal and spoke fluently, and he was also capable of simple reasoning. However, he was not able to work with the academic program because of the aggression that he showed in a classroom when someone cried. Rohit would start to attack the person who was crying, and it did not matter if it was a man, woman, or even a child. Rohit became so sensitive that he added to his auditory triggers. People crying, pressure cookers going off, boys screaming, especially the ones that had bullied him, and also loud authoritative reprimands. Rohit has gone through a tough life journey. From being a child who had easy access to things, he's now struggling with his day-to-day existence. Of course, he has learned to accommodate and evolve, and I do believe that pain is a great teacher, and Rohit has learned from his pain a great deal. So let's explore his triggers, which led to his behaviors, and how all these connected to him not getting an education. When he was young and walking in his apartment seeking friends, a neurotypical child spoke to him about how the apartment had turned into the chocolate world from Rohit's favorite Chota Beam series. Rohit bit a car, ate mud, thinking that they were made of chocolate, and drank from the pool, thinking it was blueberry juice. And of course, also got reprimanded by the security and other folk living in the apartment, while the boy who played the prank laughed at it all. Rohit did it as his literal mind did not allow him the possibility of someone betraying his trust in such a manner. Rohit was also made to take off his pants once by kids younger than him, and all this because he was pursuing them as he desired to make friends. Many such episodes obviously made him a misfit, and he started to question why he was being treated like that. There would be many evenings where he would spend hours screaming when the boys played down in the basement while he was locked inside a room. Many schools refused to help him. Hence, at the age of 10, he was functioning more like a 7-year-old child. So we picked him up and started to engage him in the classroom with students that were mapped, bearing his difficulties in mind. He was put through a rigorous academic program designed at SK, which uses advanced tech mechanisms. And also, we worked extensively on a behavior management program with a behavior modifier. She helped him build coping mechanisms to deal with his anger and also learn to walk away from crying people as opposed to harming them or harming himself and having a huge meltdown. It did not happen in 1 month or 1 year, but we kept at it. And it took 4 years. Eventually, we did manage to break the cycle. Rohit was beginning to walk away when people cried. Early days, he would run. Then he started to walk away calmly. And now sometimes he just puts on his headphones and ignores the crying. He has indeed come a long way. What you're looking at is the bystander anthology. It is something that came into our space and captured these stories of our students of how they felt from the outside looking in. What we learned is that only when comprehension was built, Rohit began to communicate his feelings to us more effectively. And this allowed us to intervene more effectively to solve the problem. The fact that his cognition was growing also helped him understand his actions and consequences. He connected with why he needed to cope as opposed to expressing his anger, which could be avoided. So the solution was never to stop his education, but in fact, curate the education to help him answer these questions, and he was struggling with. He was introduced to the word autism, which helped him understand that his mind was different from the others. We also told him that he must be proud because he has a neurodiverse mind, and anyone telling him anything else would be lying. Rohit discovered a lot of his life through the classroom interactions, which were focused on building literature concepts that connected to his life experiences so that he could analyze how to deal with unexpected and unpredictable human behaviors and circumstances. Math concepts that focused on the value of money and how he could use that money, be careful with it, save it, etc. Science concept that helped him understand how things worked in the world so that he did not say silly things in front of others, along with why he must not simply believe what everyone would say to him. While we have overcome all this together, and today we have a very mature, hopeful youth who expresses his dreams and motivations, it has been a difficult journey, not just for him, but also for his family. Today, he has finished 3 subjects in the NIOS, which is the National Open System, and mind you, with no support whatsoever. He's a dedicated student who works hard and gets no scribe during his examinations either. Due to the delays, thanks to COVID, he has 2 more subjects left to finish his grade 10. Rohit has a natural inclination towards the arts. In fact, many on the spectrum have it, and it has been proved in many research studies. Rohit would in fact use drawings to calm himself down when he was anxious. He would tell stories from his life and also recover from the traumas and meltdown episodes. One day, Rohit came to me and said that he had seen a dream in which he could see the front face of a girl and also the back of the girl. He kept insisting that maybe there were 2 different girls, and I had to explain to him that it was the same girl as he had confirmed, but she was split into 2 images. That is when I realized that he had a surreal mind, a mind that thinks and feels like Dali. The only disconnect is that he is not able to analyze and express his ideas as effectively as Dali did. And that is how his surreal journey in the arts began. Now, do you really think that autism is limited? Or can all of you see the possibilities of this neurodiverse mind just like me? I refuse to believe that this mind should be made to copy other neurotypicals and become like them. I think we are clipping their wings by asking them to do so, and not to mention, as one of my students, Kevin, told me once, Akshay, I think my parents were fighting because I have autism, and I cannot think like the other neurotypical children at school. Well, what we need to remember is that a label is given by science so that we know what we must do to help, and not so we can lament about the label. That is counterproductive. So, how do we do things differently at SK, and what is so special about us? Currently, we run an academy which has an academic school catering for children from grade 1 to grade 10, and an art school which trains teenagers and young adults with autism to become professional artists. We know that the final solution lies in curating an environment with trained professionals who have the acumen to help this mind achieve its potential. Some famous minds like Temple Grandin, Donna Williams, Albert Einstein, Bill Gates, Sir Anthony Hopkins, Charles Darwin, and Sir Isaac Newton all had autism. And many people with autism can not only perform their jobs effectively, but succeed at the very highest levels. At SK, we believe in honing such minds and creating stories that will inspire you. To do that, we design specific environments. We have a 1 is to 2 or a 1 is to 4 teacher student ratio in the classroom. We work with technology as it is predictable and allows for simplification of concepts visually and auditorily. We design autism specific art and academic curriculums. We do hands on learning, follow the models of experiential teaching. Our dream is to build a final vision, a safe haven, a community for people with autism, which can be scaled across the country so that more and more minds are given the freedom to expand and be empowered. We do not talk about inclusion. We want to be drivers of inclusion. And for that, we have a phase plan. We first will set up the semi residential spaces so we can enable independence from an early age, a feature or a factor that has never been worked on at the homes in India. Phase two is the artistic collective, which will aim to create artist studios, a curation team, and co working spaces. Phase three is the community plan, wherein we want a design and sales team, merchandise shops, along with theater and resto cafe spaces, all enabling this autistic community to position itself and showcase the talents of those on the spectrum. The final phase will be the dwelling units for adults with autism, so they can live independent lives, choose partners, have dreams just like any other, with the resources in place to facilitate such life experiences. So, our value proposition is to ensure financial and livelihood independence for autistic people by tailoring customized cognitive and creative arts centric programs, along with providing branding, marketing, and design services and co working and residential spaces, thus building a thriving autism artistic collective for those on the high functioning end of the spectrum. The most inspiring aspect of this dream, if I may say, is that this process that we have set in place will allow for the creation of strong leaders from the autism community who can be the voice that can work to support the rest of the community. Not to mention that we will be building a codependent, neurotypical, and autistic community, thus truly establishing a model for inclusion. I'm grateful for the time, and thank you very much all for listening.
Thank you, Akshay. I do have questions from the associates, and a very similar question is that Om Prakash and Abhilasha, they would like to know how they can enroll students in your NGO.
It's a very simple two-step process. Number one, you need to figure out which faculty or which platform you're looking at, whether it's the academic or the arts. Now, two things work in both of these spaces. The academic space, we have an assessment criteria that they have to put the child through, because we do build, like I said, groups that are designed to kind of work with each other. The peer relationship is extremely important. How they are going to manage each other and how their education can kind of help each other learn is important. So that goes through an assessment. The art space, I mean, many people come to me and they say, hey, I have a child on the spectrum, make him an artist. I can't make anybody an artist. They have to have the inclination. And that's what is important.
Sure, Akshayee. I have some more questions come up. There's a question asking about an age limit. Is there an age limit for admissions?
Age limit for admissions in the art department, not really. In the academic department, the entry level is 6 or 7 for best results. Yes, because we prefer to start young.
Yeah, and then there's another question. Can neurodiverse people differentiate between fact and fiction when reading? For example, if they read a novel.
Can they differentiate between fact and fiction? Yes, they can. They can. What actually happens with their learning processes is it works on a very associative level. Now, when you think about like learning processes for the neurotypical mind, what we do in our minds is learn through association, but we expand on that association. That is where the imaginative element comes in, right? But with people on the spectrum, they've learned primarily with association, and hence the generalization becomes more complex for them because that's what they're not able to do, which is why in my talk, I said that the exposure is very key. The maximum possibilities that you can expose them to, the better that they also will be able to function in the same way.
Actually, I know we are on top of the hour, but I have some really nice questions here.
Sure.
There's a Benita's daughter is asking your question. How do I understand someone with autism and how do I help them or be kind to them?
I think understanding is the next step. The first step is to accept without judging. I think that's one of the fears that many folk have when they meet somebody on the spectrum, because their social interaction is very different from what a neurotypical society believes in, and that takes aback many people. So I think that needs to stop. For us to have these rigid ideas of socialization and to say that this is the only way to socialize, I mean, there could be a very good possibility you walk into a space and somebody with autism comes and sits on your lap. I know it's not something that you would enjoy or you would be happy to happen with you, but all you have to do is please don't sit on my lap. I don't want you to sit on my lap. Here's a chair. Can you sit on the chair? So I think trying to find different ways of socializing, accepting the eccentric, the oddities, becomes a way of taking care of autism and also understanding autism.
Sure. Thanks, Akshayee. Do you take volunteers?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So Kashmira, I'm just going to give you Akshayee's email ID so you can just write to her and then we'll figure out how you can volunteer over there. Actually, I do have a question for you in terms of, I do know that it must have been very challenging for you to set up the NGO and the school. So anything that from a community standpoint, we can help to volunteer, or how can we as an organization do more?
I think one thing that I always tell when people say they want to volunteer, you did hear the story of where Rohit was seeking friendships. He was seeking social connections. A lot of the kids in the space seek that, and the social isolation being so high for them. And they also, as they get older, start to realize that they are not accepted as much. So one of the first things I do with volunteers is please come in and start spending time with the kids. It's okay to just sit and sing a song with them. It's okay to just sit down and talk to them to see if you can create more buddy relationships. Somebody that I can reach out to. I mean, we do that very naturally. We all have friends when we are feeling down and low and we can pick up the phone and talk to somebody. That's not how it works for these kids. And they really need that support. And sometimes it's a lot for this really small community of teachers and parents to take on, because we are 24/7 in the midst of 30 kids trying to call us frantically and talk about all the problems that they're having. And there's a repetitive value to it because they think that they have to, that we are not getting it. And so they tell us the same problem 50 times. And they're also, one interesting thing that this mind does is it seeks for answers, and it says like, okay, I have 50 people here. Out of these 50, 49 have to say yes, and then I'm going to listen. If even 45 say yes and the other 5 say no, I'll probably try the no. So as a community, I always want people to come interface with them, spend some more time, get to connect with the children. That's number one. Number two, kids are not very used to different kinds of people coming and spending 2 hours, 3 hours teaching time, doing socialization activities, doing life skills. There's such a lot of work that we actually could use help in. So really depending on each and every individual person's interest, something that motivates them, we will be able to kind of match it in the space. We also could use help on the back end. We create curriculums, we create content, we require a lot of help to take this out, because we know that as a space we have a limitation to how much we can do and what we can provide, because we don't want to essentially kind of pull our quality down, which means that we have to keep the numbers low. But we know the kind of work that we are doing can really go out and create a larger scale impact, can really help many more lives, and we want the help of the community to be able to do that. I think there is a lot. There's a long list. I can go on, but I'm happy to share an email with details on this and kind of talk more if we need to. But yes, I have a long list. I can promise you that.
Yeah. So then we'll call it a wrap. We're just a little over time. So thank you so much, Akshayee. I think meeting you and like meeting Anima has been an eye opener for us in terms of learning more about your NGO, learning more about the good work that you guys are doing. So we wish you all the very best, and thank you so much for joining today. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for listening. It has been lovely. Thank you.